In Exodus chapter 1, Pharaoh, the children of Israel were in Egypt, and they were held captive by Pharaoh. They were working as slaves. And Pharaoh worked them very, very hard because he was afraid. He was afraid of what would happen if they realized who they were. He was afraid of what would happen if they realized just what they could do. And he was working them very hard, and the more he worked them, the bigger they became and the more powerful they became. And he saw in them power. And he looked at them through human eyes and saw fear. And what human fear does is it brings slavery. And so he just worked them harder and harder. So then he told the midwives, he said, okay, when the boys are born, I want you to kill them. Kill them. I don't want them to live. The midwives feared God as well. And they didn't. When the boys were born, they let them live. And Pharaoh called them and said, why did you do this? And they said, well, because these Hebrew women are not like your Egyptian women, and they have them before we can do anything about it. So the midwives feared, but that fear brought them blessings. They feared God more than man. Exodus 2, 1 through 10 is where I want to read. It was in this time of fear and murder that Jochebed had Moses. A man of the house of Levi went and took as a wife a daughter of Levi. So the woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she took an ark of bulrushes for him and daubed it with asphalt and pitch, put the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the river's bank. And his sisters stood afar off to know what would be done to him. Then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, and her maidens walked along the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it. And when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. And she had compassion on him. And she said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. This is the sister. Then his sisters said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she should nurse the child for you? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. So the maiden went and called the child's mother. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages. So the woman took the child and nursed him. And the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So she called his name Moses, saying, because I drew him out of the water. With remarkable bravery, this mother took that baby and set him down in the water, in the ark that she had made for him, and let him go, because she knew that she couldn't keep him safe where he was at. Did she know what was coming ahead? No. Did she imagine all the things that could have happened if she had let him go? I'm sure she did. I'm sure she did. This wasn't the first time that a baby was put in the Nile, but before the babies were thrown into the Nile, because the Hebrew midwives wouldn't kill the babies. So if you think about it, that area was probably feeding grounds for whatever happened to want good, soft babies. So she knew what kind of environment she was releasing Moses into. She knew how harsh of a reality it was probably going to be. But she also knew that she had done everything that she could to keep that baby safe, to keep that child hidden, and to keep him protected so he could grow and be all that God had for him to be. And she couldn't do it anymore. Verse 3 says, and when she could no longer hide him, there came a time when she had to do something. There came a time when she had to love another way. And she probably thought, I can't bear to see what will happen to him if he's discovered here with me. So I'm just going to send him off because then at least I won't have to watch whatever happens. So maybe with a lot of reluctancy, she sent him off, holding her breath, saying, God, I don't know what you're going to do. I can imagine all sorts of awful things are about to happen, but I've got to let him go because I can't do this myself. And then, amazingly, Pharaoh's daughter finds the child. And she takes him. And she saves him. And then, full circle, it comes back to Jacob again. And she gets to hold the baby, and she gets to train the baby, and she gets to teach the baby. And then she gets to dread having to give the baby back again. Totally different circumstances, but she was still having to let go. I can't imagine how difficult that was, because now it definitely wasn't the perfect scenario. And the very thing that was meant to kill the baby actually was what brought about its salvation. And not only Moses' salvation, but the salvation of the entire Hebrew children. The nation of Israel floated in that basket in the Nile River that was designed to destroy the nation, actually brought the nation deliverance. But the mother didn't know that when she released that baby. And now she's having to release him again. And even though she knows he's alive, it's definitely not the best case scenario. He's going from the mother's house to the enemy's camp. He's going to be raised by the very ones who are wanting to kill him. So it's not a good scenario. But then neither was Joseph. Joseph's scenario wasn't good. But God turned it around. Joseph even said that the thing that the enemy intended for evil, God intended for good. There's so many cases of that in the Bible. And you know, Paul told us in Romans 8:38, all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. So God just takes this deck of cards that we call life, and he just shuffles them all together. And somehow they turn out the way he's supposed to. But it's kind of like when we're teaching our kids to tie their shoes, you know. If they're tying their shoes, but you're holding either end of those shoestrings, there's not a whole lot they can do. We have to let go. There comes a time when we have to let go, and our kids make their own decisions, whether those are good decisions or whether those are bad decisions. There's only a certain time that we have that we can hold on to it, and they'll never learn to tie those shoestrings if you're holding on to the ends. You have to let God take care of that. And sometimes, kind of like Jochebed, all we can do is release them and watch. You just have to watch or not watch. There was a lot of times when I just closed my eyes. I didn't want to watch. So it's a different struggle now. Now she's saying, well, now what? Now he's over here being raised by the enemy. God designated deliverer for him, but he ended up being a convicted murderer. And then he couldn't catch a break because he was pulled from his loving house, and then he had to run from the only home that he had ever known and he grew up in. And it may be that you have raised your child in a Christian home, but now it seems like they're sleeping under the roof of the enemy. You may have spoken life over them daily, but now they seem to be gambling with death on a regular basis. Or your child may have never been introduced to the Lord at an early age, and he never knew him, and he seems either further away from him now than he's ever been before. But you know what? Just like God knew where Moses was in every aspect, God knows where your child is. So if you don't know where your child is, you can still pray, because God knows where he is or she is, and God can